At a stroke, Volkswagen's Multivan redefines what you can expect a really large people carrier to be. This 7-seat Caravelle replacement sheds its predecessor's commercial vehicle roots and is the only model in the segment not to be based on a van. Yet it's supremely spacious and flexible for families.
Despite the suggestions of its name, this is neither a van trying to be a car or a car trying to be a van. And after years of continually reviewing large people-carrying models falling into one or other of those categories, we find that all rather interesting. The drive system of our Multivan test vehicle certainly isn't one you'd expect to typically find in a van. A plug-in hybrid setup offering 218 PS from the combination of a 1.4 TSI petrol engine and an 85 kilowatt electric motor. Nor is the silence of this big Volkswagen's progress when forward motion is being sourced purely from the 13 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, which is said to be possible when fully charged for up to 31 miles. Combined cycle fuel economy is rated at up to 156.9 mpg, and the best CO2 reading is 41 grams per kilometre. Changing gear, as with all multivans, is done via a dash-mounted auto selector so small you might miss it, though with this eHybrid model there are 6 ratios rather than the usual 7. There are other engine choices, of course. We'd suggest you try and avoid the base 1.5 TSI 150 PS petrol unit, which feels somewhat overburdened by the task of lugging about a family bus weighing over 2.8 tonnes. And the other conventional petrol unit in the range, a 2-litre TSI power plant with 204 PS, would involve a considerably large chunk of your annual income being directed toward your local filling station emporium. All of which may leave you minded to disregard the current zeitgeist and choose to fuel this family wagon from the black pump. Volkswagen's introduced all kinds of environmental updates to its 2-litre TDI diesel engine to calm any fears you might have on that score. And this 150 PS unit fronts up with 360 newton meters of grunt, nearly 50% more pulling power than this eHybrid model, which makes a lot of difference when overtaking. Whatever your choice of power plant in town, parking's easier than you might expect, even with the lengthier, long body shape, thanks to the commanding driving position and the glassy cabin. And public parking roof height restrictors needn't leave you in a cold sweat, thanks to the fact that both multivan variants sit 83mm lower than the old Caravelle. Even in this standard form, the Multivan is 69mm longer than the rather substantial old Caravelle. So if you're one of those MPV owners with a semi-permanent parking bay at the local maternity unit, that space will need to be at least 4.8 metres deep. Should you want to supersize the proposition, there's an alternative long body style, which adds a further 200mm to the length. This Multivan's difference over the Caravelle, though, is a lot more than just dimensional. Helping it look less of a van is a 43mm drop in height, which at least means that Volkswagen owners in the segment need not fear low-hanging multi-storey car parks. Other things that visually transition this model from bus to MPV include chamfered corners, short overhangs, and this prominent lower panel crease. You might be reminded a little of it at the rear too, where the tailgate's bluff as the Eiger, though Volkswagen has added 2 part LED lights and full-width glazing for the first time in this segment. The front shows the Multivan at its most car-like, with a raked-back windscreen that will feel very avant-garde for folk graduating on from the Caravelle. But of course, what really matters is found inside. You can only have 7 seats. That format is standard, though a 222 6-seater layout is a no-cost option. The main difference over the older generation design is the replacement of the previous third-row bench with individual chairs, 3 in this 7-seat model. Unfortunately, the 2 chairs in the middle of the cabin can no longer be so easily swiveled around to face these rearmost ones. You have to lift the middle seats off their runners and then physically turn them round before you set off. At least a 25% seat weight reduction makes that easier to do. You'll have plenty of options in deciding upon seating placement, thanks to all the various positioning points along the rails that span the length of the cabin floor. The middle rail also serves this clever sliding multifunction table with its fold-out leaves and double twin cup holders. Finally, let's leave the rear cabin and take a look up front. Climb up behind the wheel and there's a commandingly spacious feel, largely because the deletion of a gear stick and a manual handbrake frees up all this room between the seats. If you wish, that can be filled by moving the sliding multifunction table we mentioned earlier up from the cabin towards the dash, where it can then act as a kind of impromptu centre console. You'll immediately notice the screen tech, which is Volkswagen's latest. The 10-inch centre display can be had in this base ready-to-discover form or in upgraded nav-enabled Discover Media guise. And this instrument screen is available as a 10-inch digital cockpit monitor or with the more configurable 10.25-inch digital cockpit Pro setup. Ergonomically, there are a few irritations. These temperature slider controls and the various rather fiddly touch-sensitive buttons. But the designers have got most of the basics right, like these very supportive seats, which have built-in lumbar support and are great on longer trips. There's lots of cabin storage too, including 2 glove boxes and a couple of cup holders that flip out from the centre console. Let's finish with a look at luggage space. Well, this is where a super large people carrier like this comes into its own. With a conventional car-like large MPV, if all 7 seats are occupied, it's unlikely that you'll also have enough space for everyone's luggage. With a Multivan, it's different, and it's helpful here that you get this mid-level hard cover that acts as a divider, which enables you to stack things above the boot floor using the cargo area's height rather than its length. You get 2 silver floor-level tie-downs, but there's no underfloor compartment, which, with this eHybrid variant, is particularly irksome because it means that there's nowhere to store this charging lead. But let's get to the figures. Now, the cargo capacity with all the seats in use is 469 litres with this standard model, which, to give you some perspective, is about double the amount that you get in a similar scenario with a large MPV like Volkswagen's old Charan. If you need more room than that, the Multivan in long spec can swallow a 763-litre capacity with all 3 seating rows in use. With the third row removed and the second row seats positioned to give folk using them reasonable legroom, you're looking at about 1,844 litres of capacity with the standard Multivan, or 2,171 litres with the long version. Take the second row out as well, and you'd have 3,672 litres with this standard model, or 4,005 in the long variant. And in summary, well, the name is perhaps unfortunate given the switch away from commercial routes, but for us this Multivan nevertheless resets the segment standard for what a really large people carrier can be. Ride and handling are on a different level from this model's LCV-based rivals, and you get a far more car-like cabin and more up-to-date connectivity too. Boxier van-derived competitors can offer more luggage space, and you'd still consider Mercedes V-Class in this sector if luxury was everything. But the Multivan, though certainly not inexpensive, could save you so much over one of those that you might be able to justify having this Volkswagen with the plug-in hybrid powertrain that no other MPV in this segment can offer. It'll all be a different world for customers graduating on from a Caravelle, and not before time. It's long overdue for cars in this class to significantly raise their game, and that's just what's happened here.